Very special shout out this week to our very own Christina McCardle. Happy birthday, Christina. We love you so much. This has been your brainchild and your passion has been moving us forward. And we're so happy to celebrate you and wishing you all the best. Our second shout out today is for Peggy Graniero. Peggy won our $25 Amazon gift certificate for being in our Facebook 450 followers contest. So Peggy will be reaching out to you so that you can collect your Amazon gift card. And thanks so much for listening and for all your support. On to today's episode.
We are Christina,
Oneida,
Alicia, Colleen.
Welcome to 4NPs Podcast.
This is a podcast by 4NPs. 4NPs, advanced practice nurses, students, and anyone interested in the medical arts.
That's the number 4 NPS podcast.
If you have a topic you'd like to see covered, please feel free to email us at 4npspodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us through our social media.
This week we have Erica Dorn. Erica is a previously burnt out family nurse practitioner. She currently works in a rural health center covering primary care and emergency services. Erica is a burnout coach for nurse practitioners who are looking to create work-life balance and conquer the burnout. She has noticed the exhaustion, overwhelm, and rise of burnout, especially during the pandemic. As the burnout nurse practitioner, Erica is able to help these nurse practitioners get their lives back. When she's not at work or coaching NPs, Erica loves to spend time outdoors with her family. Come have a listen to our interview with Erica and learn what burnout looks like and what you can do about it, and see if maybe the burnout coach can help you too.
All right. So, hi, Erica. We're the 4NPs. There's only 3 of us here actually for this recording. I'm Christina.
I'm Colleen.
Hi, I'm Alicia.
And Oneida unfortunately can't join us, but thank you for coming on.
It's so nice to have you here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So you want to tell us a little bit about your story, how you came to, becoming a nurse, and then how you got into becoming a burnout coach?
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to do something in healthcare. So in high school, I decided nursing would be a good fit. I really wanted to, make an impact, make a difference in my patients' lives. Once I got into nursing, I realized you don't have time to sit and hold your patient's hand. There's so many other things to do as a nurse. Currently, I am a family nurse practitioner. I work in a critical access hospital doing primary care and then emergency services. And I started the Burned Out Nurse Practitioner a little over a year ago. My burnout story started actually as an RN on a busy acute care floor. I was working long hours. We all know 12-hour shifts are actually 13 to 15 hours. I was just mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted. I dreaded going to work. I wasn't showing compassion or empathy to my patients. I started to feel detached from my work, from my family, and even from myself. And it took me a few years to overcome the burnout. I actually didn't even know I was burned out until I read an article on compassion fatigue and checkmarked every single box. So burnout is something that I really struggled with, but I was able to overcome. And so that's what I do now. I'm a burnout coach. I help overwhelmed, stressed out NPs create work-life balance and conquer the burnout.
That's amazing. And I think that there's such a huge need for that. Just meeting you, this is the first time I've ever heard of a burnout coach.
Yeah.
So is it a new field, or how would nurses know? Is it just for nursing, or is it for all healthcare?
Yeah. So a burnout coach is similar to like a life coach. I specifically help nurse practitioners with burnout, but there are other burnout coaches who help, in different fields of work. So I have done one-to-one work. I currently have some courses, but really as a burnout coach, I help my students identify what they're struggling with. We talk about setting boundaries. We talk about, actually doing the self-care that we know works. We talk about, lots of different ways that you can overcome the burnout in your current role.
So Erica, what is burnout? What does that look like? How would I know that I'm burnt out? Is this something you recognize in yourself, or is it like, I don't know what the symptoms are?
Yeah, it can be different for everyone. Like I said, I didn't even know that I was burned out until I read an article about it. But just that feeling of detachment from your work and from your life, you don't enjoy the nursing field anymore. You just dread going to work. We've all had bad days at work, but when those bad days kind of build up on each other, it can lead to burnout. And so just that exhaustion, the compassion fatigue, just negative beliefs, negative mindset. Yeah, there's lots of signs and symptoms of burnout.
So for you recognizing now that you were officially burned out, like how did you formulate that plan? Because it's one thing to identify it, because I definitely have been in a place of burnout where exactly how you're describing, I was driving to work an hour to a busy OR, and I would cry on the way to work, and I would cry on the way home, and I would have that sense of dread, the same as you described it, and just that total discontentment with just nursing and being, and actually asking myself, like, why did I become a nurse? And that's a sad place to be. So once you had identified it for yourself, obviously you had to go and now develop a plan for yourself before now you're coaching others. So how did you start with you, I guess? What things did you implement and who helped you?
Yeah. So looking back, I didn't have like my own burnout coach. But nurses and nurse practitioners and people in the healthcare field that did enjoy their job. And so I kind of just looked to them, kind of looked what they were doing. I think the main thing for me was just realizing that I'm in control of my own life and my own happiness. I can't always choose what my administrator says. If they are wanting me to see, double book patients and see more patients, sicker patients. But I am in control of how I feel about that and how my outlook and mindset is. So that was really the biggest thing for me. I also started doing self-care, which I think nurse practitioners and nurses are terrible at self-care. We, coach our patients on diet and exercise, but we don't do it very well. So once I, started to put my needs first and started to take care of myself, that was something that really helped me to overcome the burnout.
So what is there extra school to become a burnout coach? Is there a certification that you take to become a burnout coach? I assume you graduated with like an adult health nurse practitioner or a family nurse practitioner. And then what was the process?
Yeah, so I have my family nurse practitioner master's degree, and I personally did not do any extra like certification or anything. I don't know that if there is a certification specifically for burnout, but there are, life coach programs. I did have like business mentors along the way that kind of helped me get that process started, but no specific certification.
Okay. And if I feel that I need a burnout coach, I need a life coach, who do I go to for that? Do I seek you out personally, or do I go to like my manager and then they refer? Like, how does that work?
I'm not sure that, your managers at work would know what a burnout coach is, but, if you Google it, or, there's multiple people on social media that have kind of similar roles. And so I think that would be a good start to find someone who can help you.
Okay. Thank you.
Erica, are you self-employed as a burnout coach, or do you work for another bigger company?
I have my own business.
You do. So did you set that up as like a corporation with a lawyer, or you're just doing it like?
Yeah, I have an LLC for my business.
Okay. And how do you feel about being self-employed? How many hours do you put in to do that?
Well, I do work full time as a family nurse practitioner. So And I have two small kids at home, so I have to be a little creative on how I do my work. And it kind of depends on the week, probably around 10 hours. And, a lot of that is creating content. So I have a blog, I have a Facebook and Instagram page. And really, I want to give that support for nurses and nurse practitioners to know that they're not alone and to have, resources on overcoming burnout.
That's so great. So then if I'm a nurse practitioner and I reach out to you and I'm burnt out and I need your help, what are some of the things that we're going to do together to help get through it?
Well, I really work with my clients on identifying exactly what is causing their burnout. And then we work, create a plan to overcome that. So setting boundaries is a huge one. So I help my clients do that. And then also I've seen, work-life balance as a major cause to burnout, and specifically charting.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of NPs are bringing their charts home or staying late at the office, and it's really affecting their family life. And so I help nurse practitioners do that. And then also just, mindset and creating a more positive mindset, gratitude. There's lots of different factors.
So Erica, as you start coaching, let's say a nurse practitioner, is your service, is it like once a week you would speak with this nurse practitioner, or would you start with like a plan, like to have discussions with them or suggestions with them like once a month, or like, and how long would that last? Would it be like a 4 to 6 week type of thing? And then, maybe they'd reach out to you like PRN, or what would that look like as far as them going through a course with you? I don't know if you would even call it a course, but just going through your program.
Yeah. So for the one-to-one coaching, I usually say about, at least 4 weeks meeting for about an hour on a weekly basis. We really can hold ourselves accountable if we have someone else that is holding us accountable. So we talk about, a lot of things that the client nurse practitioner can do to help overcome the burnout. And then my role is to, make sure that they're getting that done. We talk about any new struggles that come up. I like to keep it pretty open for the nurse practitioner. For the self-study course that I have, it has all the modules, lots of like videos, workbooks, that sort of thing. And so some nurse practitioners have found that's a little bit easier just because they can do that kind of on their own time. We have very busy schedules as nurse practitioners.
Oh, definitely. Crazy. Do you feel like there's a certain specialty? What role do you find seeks you out the most to help with their burnout?
I have had a majority of family practice, I think just because that's, the larger portion of nurse practitioners. But I mean, I've talked to, specialty NPs and acute care. I know the emergency room nurse practitioners are really struggling right now just with the pandemic. So, I mean, burnout, there's, good and bad with every specialty, and we each have our own types of struggles.
Absolutely.
Erica, what are sort of the things that you teach about self-care?
So self-care is something that I really push. It should be a non-negotiable, but self-care is individualized. So I'm not going to tell you, to eat a vegetarian diet or to go run a 5K if you absolutely hate running. Self-care, can come in many different forms. So you have to identify. And I think most of us know, what we like to do for stress management, activities. So whether that's, going out with your friends or just hanging at home, spending time with your kids, a lot of us know what we should be doing, but it's more of an issue of actually doing it and, identifying the positives that we get from doing that self-care and just knowing the importance of it and putting our needs first.
And so time management might be a component of that also.
Yes.
Just to be able to manage that whole big picture It sounds like taking the time and dedicating time for self-care.
We have to learn how to prioritize our time. We only get 24 hours in a day, and our roles as nurse practitioners, we're very busy in our clinical setting, but also some of us bring work home, or even just thinking out work when you're at home. And so by implementing some of those self-care and, putting your health and your needs as a priority can really help.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So it sounds like you definitely individualize the plan of action, for each person, defining, what their personal goals are, defining what their issues are as far as time management and boundaries. It's funny that you say, we have 24 hours in a day. And we were talking with another nurse practitioner who has about like 5 different roles. And we're asking her, how in the world do you do all this? And she was like, oh, I wish there was an 8th day to the week. And it's like, because she wants to put that much more into what she does. Like she absolutely loves what she does. She has she's very driven and she has this passion. And that's so awesome. But so many of us out there, you can definitely get burnt out and lose that passion, and discovering that again is so vital. So it sounds like, you're able to provide that for people that can go through your course and then, reignite the reason why they became a nurse in the first place, because it does take a huge part of your life and a part of your day and a part of your livelihood. And it's really awesome. So like, how do you, so you're full-time as a nurse practitioner, you're doing the burnout coaching. I know you must be implementing some of your own strategies for yourself, but it still seems like a lot that you'd have to manage yourself. And, when do you say for you, it's time to back off? And like, how do you make that happen for yourself? Like as far as taking time off or going away, taking vacation, how do you do it?
Yeah, I do everything that I teach. So I wake up before my kids so that I can get, my exercise and my self-care, my gratitude journal done. At work, I'm focused, on my work, seeing patients and completing the charts. And then, I have 2 small kids. So once I get home, I eliminate those distractions, put my phone down, give them my full attention and focus. And then I just have learned to put my family and myself needs first. So I do on-call, being in a critical access hospital. So there's times that, I have to go in for an emergency room visit, and that I'm not, completely focused on my kids. I have my husband to help me and support me with that. But we just have to find some sort of balance. It's not every day is going to be perfect. Mm-hmm. But once you determine what it is that you want to do, as, if that's self-care, or, starting your own business or starting a blog or whatever that is, we just have to prioritize that and get a little creative with implementing it.
Right. I like what you said about it's not about perfection, but that balance, mm-hmm. because that definitely sounds like a key. Because I think as nurses too, we're very much perfectionists. We can be, and if things are not exactly like that can kind of overwhelm us too. So that's definitely good. And I like what you said earlier about a gratitude journal, because I think reshifting focus, into gratitude definitely impacts you, so that no matter what happens, because you can't always change the circumstances, but changing your mindset and how you approach things from a place of gratitude probably makes that's the best medicine. Because I know at times when I've done that, it's definitely the situations around me haven't changed, yet it was me that changed because my focus and how I was processing, things that were coming my way was just totally different. So that just definitely added to an improvement overall of just kind of just your workday quality.
Oh, it's amazing what a gratitude journal, and, I write down, 5 to 10 things every morning that I'm grateful for. But then I find myself throughout the day, if something amazing happens, I'm grateful in that moment. So it really just does bring awareness to what we actually have.
So important. Wow.
Yeah. Even just filling what I like to call the girl cup,
Yeah.
Sometimes like as part of self-care, I know for me, certainly with the ladies that I'm with on this podcast, because they're very near and dear to me. And I have a couple other small groups of friends, and I try to with intention, and we have always done this with intention, get together, because these are the people who, when I'm around them, I fill my cup up a little bit. And when my cup is full, then I have more to give to somebody else. And I think, I'm a lot older than you, Erica. So maybe, I guess over the years, I did learn that a little bit, and it really does work. It's amazing that it could carry you for the times when it is really hard to keep moving forward, because you are, feeling burnt out about the things that you can't control.
And that's an example of burnout. As healthcare providers, we're constantly giving to others. Sometimes we don't even have time for a bathroom break because we have to go see the next patient. And so just doing little things for yourself, and like you said, filling your cup up, that way it spills out into our family lives, our relationships, our patients, our coworkers.
Welcome again, Erica. This is Oneida. What advice do you have for nursing students and also NP students as they transition into their roles?
Definitely know yourself. So don't be afraid to, take time to do the self-care, to find a role that will support you. And I think especially when you are interviewing for a job, don't be afraid to ask about, how their current nurse practitioners manage work and life. Make sure you have enough PTO days or vacation days or whatever it is. And then also just let them know that, if you have kids, let them know your family is super important to you. Don't be afraid to have a lot of those conversations up front. I also think make sure you have a contract that says specifically, the pay structure, what their expectations are of you, and then also, how many hours you're going to be working, salary, hourly, all of those things, because a lot of things can change. And I think we have to be adaptable to those changes. But, if it's something that goes against your contract, that it's a lot easier to pull that out and say, hey, this isn't what we talked about in the contract. I think just always having some way of refinding your purpose. So the reason why you went into healthcare, a lot of times we can become detached from that just with all the stress, the limiting beliefs, the, different role, and all the other things that go along with being a nurse practitioner. But if you can always come back to that reason why you went into healthcare, that might help.
Do you have any questions for us, Erica?
Yeah, I'm just curious if any of you have been burned out in the past and what that burnout looked like for you guys.
I think I was burnt out as an RN. I was an LPN briefly, and I had a newborn at home, and then I got my RN, and I started working in a hospital in an ICU unit. And I don't think, like you mentioned before, I don't know that I was really aware how burnt out I was. I did experience what Alicia described earlier, and we definitely have all talked about this before. I did cry all the way to work, and I cried all the way home from work. I refused to let them see me cry at work. So I basically was holding it together for my, like you said, really 14, 15-hour shifts. I kept my head above water, and I tried to keep a really good attitude. But I had a 1-year-old at home. And actually, the person who brought it to my attention was actually two people brought it to my attention. My husband, who was always very supportive of me. I've never, ever had him ever tell me I couldn't do something or shouldn't do something, or, he's always behind me 100%. And he said to me, he sat me down and he said, you can't keep going on like this. You are I was out of control. I mean, I was out of control. I wasn't sleeping. I was miserable. I'd come home to my baby and I didn't have a lot to give. I was tired. Then I would have a day off with her and all I wanted to do was sleep. I mean, I got up and I did kind of walk through the day, but I was like a zombie. I wasn't functioning. I wasn't contributing to my family. Thankfully, my husband, picked up the slack there, so I didn't damage my child. But, he said to me, and that was just after about 9 months of working on that unit, where he said, something's got to give. You gotta do something. And then I had a sister-in-law who was a nurse who said to me, you can't keep going on like this. I found a job for you. And she pushed me to apply for a different job that I didn't really want to do, but I had it in my head that I had to work in this unit for 2 years. And if I worked in that unit for 2 years, I could write my ticket. And so I had and these girls all know it. They were with me through it and talked me through it. It was really hard for me to decide to leave that job because I did really feel like I was going to be better if I could just stick through it. But everything else was falling apart. And so I needed to change jobs. And I did. And that was the best thing I actually could have done for myself. Looking back, it was hard, but I don't regret it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I've had several points where I felt burnt out, but I feel like I never knew how to deal with the burnout. So I would change jobs, I'd be like, oh, it must be this. So I think it's very important what you're doing, because if you have the tools and you can kind of take time for yourself and, monitor yourself so that when you're getting to the point of burnout, maybe you won't go there. Because I've been in several different areas of healthcare and it's, should I have stayed there and used the tools to prevent me from leaving that? Where would I be? But I think that this is so important. So I started in cardiopulmonary and then I just became burnt out with that. So I went to GI and I got burnt out with that. And then I was like, oh, I should go. I went back to school. And then you just get burnt out and you don't know, like you said, that you don't know when you're being burnt out. So you think, oh, I need to change what I'm doing to make myself feel better. But maybe that's not the answer. Maybe it is just learning how to take care of yourself and using the tools that you know and that you share with people to help kind of ease that anxiety and maybe stay where you're at. It's hard to know what is best in life. Life's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
And
Yeah,
that's so true. I mean, that's what I tell other nurse practitioners is sometimes it is necessary to quit your job. If it's a toxic work environment, if you just don't have any growth, if you've tried, to talk to administration and make some changes and nothing's getting done, at that point, it may be necessary to find a different job. But for those people who don't really have that option or feel stuck, if you start to make these self-care changes, setting boundaries, changing your mindset, creating goals that make you happy. If you try to start and do all of those things, that's going to ultimately help you to overcome the burnout. It's kind of like going on vacation. We can be relaxed and enjoy the vacation and just feel, fill our cup up. But then when we come back to that job, if we haven't changed anything, if we haven't, made the long-term changes, then we're just going to be burned out. And same thing, like you said, Christina, if you find another job, but you weren't able to make those personal changes, ultimately you'll be burned out again.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say that that element of it will follow you. And then you realize it's not the specialty or the area in nursing you're in. It's actually you because you're not able to manage, for yourself, like the self-care and the boundaries. For me, I definitely have experienced burnout, and I did the same thing that these other girls did. I tried to stick it out because you feel guilty. You feel like a failure. You feel like, you see everybody else and you're like, they're doing doing it and they seem like they're excelling and they're, doing so well. And like, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I not getting this? Or why is this so difficult for me? And then, we all go through personal things with our families and things. And I think I was in the middle of a lot of personal areas that were difficult for me, and that was flowing over into work. But yeah, I was in the OR for 6 years, and then probably 2 years longer than I should have been, because I wanted to stick it out. But if I had maybe burnout coaching or strategies to use, then I would have been able to think more clearly about, is it this area? Is it this job? Is it this specialty that I've chosen that's not a good fit for me? Or am I just, do I need to like refocus things and then I can thrive in this again? But I didn't stay to find out. I mean, I think ultimately I knew that it wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. So, and that takes a lot of courage too, to actually, and for all of these ladies, like it does take courage to leave and to move forward and start something new, because starting new is difficult also. I did start over, which is the great thing about nursing as well. I mean, of course, you don't want to be jumping every year. But you do have to find a place that ultimately you feel like this is your niche. Like this is where you belong. This is where, I think you said it earlier, Erica, like where you're creating and you're making an impact, right, on the patients that you're seeing. And, you're able to thrive from knowing that you're making a difference in people's lives. And ultimately that's why most of us get into nursing. You definitely have to know when enough is enough and when it's time to kind of say, this is not working and I'm going to move on. But definitely having some of those strategies. Now, self-care is very hard to implement for me personally. I mean, it's hard because you feel like you always have to be giving. And I think just my nature is just like, no, like if you think of yourself or you're doing something for yourself, it's not right. It's not a good mindset at all, because you're the most important person and you get to choose, how you do for you, because I can't be the best I can be and for other people if I'm not doing the best for myself. So
that's exactly right. We have to take care of ourselves before we can help everyone else. Like we talked about early, filling your cup up so that it overflows. And I work with clients on mom guilt, and, that's exactly, they feel guilty for working full time. They feel guilty for, implementing self-care and for spending time on themselves. But you have to remember that you are your own person and your kids are going to grow up and move out someday. And you have to be able to take care of yourself.
Amen. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Put the oxygen on yourself before you put it on your child.
Yep.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah. Do you ever advise somebody to leave their job? Is that ever something that you would do? Have you come across, somebody who's so burnt out, but it really is very job related?
I do, but I have them, do everything that we've talked about first to see. And there are things in our job that we hate, but there might also be things that we can be grateful for too. And so I really help each nurse practitioner, individualize, determine, what their ultimate goal are, what is exactly causing the burnout. Have you tried to make changes to overcome that? And sometimes the answer is to quit your job, but that's not something that we lead with.
You had mentioned setting boundaries. I think I have a problem with sometimes setting boundaries, especially at work, because I'm not always one to want to deal with confrontation. Is there any tools or advice that you can give for people who need to set the boundaries but are afraid of the confrontation with that?
I think we just need to be open and honest. And if you sit down and have a conversation with your administrator or your boss and say, I'm really struggling with burnout. I'm spending so many extra hours charting. I really want to be there for my kids. Just be honest about that. Before I started the nurse practitioner role I am in, I asked my administrator if I would be able to attend some of my son's school events. So, leave a few hours early so that I can attend those. And she said yes. And so I think, having that ahead of time But definitely if you're in it now, just having those hard conversations.
Erica, where can our listeners find you? And what are you up to now?
You can find me on Facebook, the Burned Out Nurse Practitioner, the page or the Facebook group. I'm on Instagram, Burned Out MP. You can go to my website, which is www.ericadornnp.com. I also have 7 tips for charting to help you to get those darn charts signed faster. And that's at chart.ericadornnp.com. You can also find that on my website. I do currently have Burnout Bootcamp for Nurse Practitioners, which is a self-study online access course. You can find that on my website. And it goes into just the whole approach to overcoming burnout. So, dealing with work issues, like dealing with difficult administration or difficult patients, setting the boundaries, things to do with life, like implementing self-care, mastering mom guilt. We also talk about how to be balanced, which is more of the inner balance. So just finding your purpose and your why and fulfillment in life. And then there's tons of bonuses. We talk about time management in the clinic, also controlling imposter syndrome and all those negative thoughts. So you can check all that out on my website. I'm also developing a course on charting. So it will look at what actually needs to go on the chart for billing and legal purposes. And then also just a ton of other helpful tips, managing your time in the clinic, getting the charts signed faster so that you don't have to bring them home or stay so late. I also want to add thank you to the 4NPs podcast for having me on here. I think it is so awesome to hear your guys' story and how all of your paths crossed and how now you are coming back together to help nurses and nurse practitioners become aware of some of these issues in healthcare and how to support them. So thank you for having me on the podcast.
Thank you for listening. 4NP's podcast has a Facebook group called Nurse Business, a community created to support one another and enjoy positive ideas and thoughts. We hope you'll join us. In addition to that, for a little fun, follow us on TikTok.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel to see some clips of our live interviews and listen to past episodes. Feel free to email us with ideas for episodes, comments about our podcast, to recommend an interviewee, or if you'd like to be interviewed yourself at 4npspodcast@gmail.com. That's the number 4, npspodcast@gmail.com.
Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 4NPs Podcast. That's the number 4NPS Podcast. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast and go to our website at 4npspodcast.com for episode transcripts, resources, and more information about us.
Thanks for listening. We hope you'll come back and listen to us in 2 more weeks when we have Alex Yacko, a urology nurse practitioner. So interesting. Will make you want to do urology. It's the coolest thing ever. See you in 2 weeks.
The information in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be used in substitute for professional care by a medical provider. The information in this podcast does not represent medical or other professional advice or services. The thoughts and opinions presented on the 4NPs podcast are of the hosts and guests and do not represent those of their employers.